Good evening, everyone. I want to make sure I introduce you. My name is Diane Burgess. I'm your county supervisor here in District 3. If you were to look at a map of Contra Costa County, you'd see West County, Central County, the waterfront, East County. That's where we are, obviously. I've been on the Board of Supervisors now. I'm on the 9th year being on the Board of Supervisors. And I've lived in Contra Costa County most of my life. And I've spent a lot of time driving Vasco Road with my children when they were young. And so I understand the concerns. And I wanted to bring people together so we could talk about it. One of my favorite quotes is, "Don't be judgmental, be curious." Walt Whitman, but also Ted Lasso. And by being here, that tells me you're curious, which is, I think, really important, because in order to solve problems, you can't have decided what the answer is and then not be able to solve it. There's a lot of components to it. So I want to recognize Teresa Anderson from now a Senator Grayson's office. So thank you for being here. He invited the other elected. It was probably short timing and there's a lot going on, but I wanted you to know that this is a conversation that's not just Contra Costa County. We're also live online, so there may be some technical things, but this conversation isn't just about a supervisor or a city council. It's about the whole region. I had a conversation with Supervisor Hover, Alameda County, and for many years it seemed like there wasn't a lot of interest from that side, and now there is a little bit. But by involving our senators, assembly members, our congressional members, that's where the money comes in. And this is not an inexpensive project. So I want to encourage you to, when you're doing these other things that you're being curious about, that you're talking to our other elected leaders to help them understand that this is important. Tonight, there's also a planning commission talking about fire stations in Brentwood. We were able to annex the fire district into Contra Costa Fire. It was determined that there needed to be 6 stations where East Contra Costa used to be. There was only 3 at the time. We've added 4. I'm trying to build 2 more. 2 more here in Brentwood. And there's a little bit of resistance. And I'm not going to go into it because it's about more emotion than anything. But I want to make you aware when there's an accident out in Vasco, we don't have very many resources. So we want to make sure that we have those firehouses built. So this is my gentle encouragement for you to help me with firehouses. So I'm going to introduce my staff. These are amazing people. And if you call my office, these are the people that you're going to meet. My chief of staff, Alicia Knuckles. My deputy chief, Stephen Griswold, and Peter Meyer, without an S. Right? Okay, no, there is an S. There is an S. See, our mayor here in Brentwood is no S, and so I always get that mixed up, especially when I'm talking in front of a crowd and get nervous. Then we have the person that's really in charge, my scheduler, Brenda Gloria. And my newest superhero in my office, Anne Police. We have one other person who's over at the Planning Commission meeting over in City Hall. That's Clara Laura. She actually does all the work in front. Okay. I have Vasco Forever Help for Families. Cynthia Loretta lost her husband, Casulo. Did I say that right? Yes. junior on November 5th, 2017. So we are approaching 8 years. Tammy Zicker. Say that, say. She's just Tam's in my life. Lost her 17-year-old daughter, Michaela, on April 19th, 2009. Cindy first reached out to my office over a year ago, and she's been able to collaborate with Public Works. She's been heroic. It's when things happen to someone, you can drop on the ground and let go, or you can stand up and turn around and try to help others. And that's what these ladies are doing. So thank you for doing what you do. And finally, the superheroes of Public Works. Carl Romer, he used to have a mountain named after him.
It's gone now.
It was actually a big pile of dirt, but we liked calling it mountain. So we have Carl Romer, who is a senior civil engineer. We have Kelly Caspeak. She's just Kelly to me. Did I say that right? Kelly! And we have from our consulting firm, Eric Side and consultant Brian, because I didn't get your last name, Gant. And these guys are going to tell you a lot of things that they know. We also did a survey, we're going to give you some information. I'm sitting in the back because I'm going to watch and listen. You can always reach out to my office. As you can probably tell, I care deeply, but I also want to actually solve problems. So this is why I'm listening. Thank you for being here and giving your time.
Hi, good evening. I'm Carl. And as Diane said, I'm a senior engineer at Public Works Martinez. And I've been working for the department for about 21 years. And my very first job was the rumble strips and channelizers on Vasco in 2004. So what comes around goes around. So this is, I guess I've been here a while. So this work we're going to do tonight, this discussion about Vasco, stems from a Department of Transportation grant we got from the federal government. And I'm very grateful for receiving that. It's $320,000 going towards helping understand what's going on in Vasco. It's not a design or anything like, it's a study of what's going on in Vasco. And our team from Wood Rogers, this is the first of 3 meetings we're going to have, but has done a great job of kind of getting into the details about what happened on Vasco. So with that, I want to tell you, we have some upcoming projects in Vasco that I think everybody will be glad. There's some pavement delamination that's going on there. We're going to get that fixed. There will be detours at the time, and we put out a press release on it, but just be aware that that work's going on. Secondly, come this August and September, we're going to be putting in more rumble strips and more channelizers and delineators between Walnut Boulevard and Camino Diablo. This will help kind of keep them separated, we say. And so this is a project I'm excited about as well. And then probably most important, I've been working with the East Contra Costa Regional Funding and something authority, Equifa as it's known, to get some funding for Vasco Road. And it's not absolutely for sure right now. I don't have it written, but the message is we've got another $25 million for Vasco Road. We have the original 15 that we got when we started to do the Vasco Road Part 2 project back in 2000. And so we have a potentially $40 million to use to upgrade Vasco Road. And this would be from the Fisk Creek Bridge up to the existing barrier. And we'd be putting in that concrete rail to keep the lanes separated from each direction. So this is a very positive thing. We've been looking forward to it for a while. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure this happens. With this, I'd like to turn this over to Eric. He'll give you a presentation, and we'll walk through it, and then we'll have questions at the end. So with that.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you, Supervisor Burgess, for attending this meeting. This is definitely a great showing. It shows how deeply the community cares about safety within the community and especially on Vasco Road. So this is great. Thank you also for filling out the survey. So this is the first workshop, so we'll be introducing the study that we will be conducting. We're going over the existing conditions and looking at the safety data. And what we hope to achieve, and kind of going over what we hope to achieve and what's been done so far, and getting you feedback, and getting feedback from you, the residents, to help us improve Vasco Road. So kind of the agenda lays out what we're going to go over in the presentation. It's gonna probably take about 30 minutes, and then we're gonna have a Q&A session afterwards. So if you have any questions, you can jot down on the handout and we'll go over at the end. Kind of going over the study background, the goals, and how long this study is gonna take. And also, what Carl mentioned, I'll also go into detail a little bit about what's been ongoing and the current projects that's going on in Vasco Road. Also the surveys and the interactive tool that you might already have completed. And then most importantly, we're going to go over the safety data and the analysis that we've already conducted on Vasco Road. So there's going to be some interesting information on that. And at the end, we're going to do a little summary about kind of what came of this first workshop, and then we're going to have questions at the end. So thank you so much. We're going to continue. So the key partners are I'm with Wood Rogers, and then the project planner on the study. And the key stakeholders is the Costa County Public Works. They're the lead agency on the study. So there's extensive support from the county as a whole, including from Supervisor Diane Bridges. As stated earlier, Brian and I are with Rogers, so we're the engineering consultant lead for the study. So we're gonna just kind of a general quick summary. We do full service engineering and transportation planning, and we specialize in safety analysis. So we're going to go over environmental, we're going to conduct outreach, and then we're going to do design. So that's all under one roof. I also want to thank Vasco Forever for engaging the members about this project and distributing the surveys and the flyers, and also White Eastway as well. They also helped with dispersing some of that information. So so a little bit of study background. I know Carl mentioned. So this study is funded primarily from the Department of Transportation, so the Rural Tribal Assistance grants. The study is going to analyze and address the safety, traffic, and roadway infrastructure along with environmental concerns. So what we're really hoping to do is create a list of prioritized projects that we can get funding for and implement. So I know a lot of times we, get, studies that might not, they look nice on the shelf, but really, we don't really hear back for a long time. But what we're hoping to do here is get a list of projects that have quantifiable engineering thought behind it, so that we can get the funding and then implement it as soon as possible. So, and just a little background. So, as many of you know, Vasco Road has high traffic volumes. A lot of cars travel on it. It's high speeds. The terrain makes it difficult as well. So, and as we'll see later, the crashes, definitely are prevalent on this corridor. So it's definitely a study that's been on the radar. And so we're glad that we can finally proceed with this and get the funding that's needed for the projects. The study goals, just some of the basic things that we're hoping to achieve. Like I said earlier, we're going to develop a list of grant-ready projects, transportation projects that will include the use of, safety countermeasures. Those are the ones that are approved by Caltrans and things that will help, reduce the severity of crashes. So, the proposed project will incorporate, cost-effective solutions. So, we're not looking to, to do the most, outlandish, improvements. We're looking to do something that, can really mitigate, the crashes. So use of, low carbon materials, innovative, construction means, and, congestion relief as well. So I know that's also an issue. And adherence to kind of the sensitive habitats that's nearby. So, and so we're looking to provide a clear pathway to implementation and delivery of transformational safety projects. So this is a little bit on the study timeline. We're currently in community workshop 1. So as Carl mentioned earlier, we're going to have 3 workshops. So this is kind of the first step in getting the feedback from you, the residents. We're going to go over a lot of the existing condition data. So the second workshop that's going to be held in the summer is kind of actually probably the one that's going to be the most involved. Instead of this format, the second workshop is most likely going to be, we're going to have tables and everyone's going to be actively involved in helping solve the issue. So we're going to have, a list of solutions that we come up with, and we're going to kind of see what works and what doesn't work. So that's going to be in the second workshop. And the third workshop in September is going to be looking at the final report. So, we're hoping to get something, a full report draft out by the fall, tentative date, but that's kind of where we're going to show you, what we came up with and the solutions going forward. So that's kind of the public, outreach section of it. And like I kind of mentioned before, this is the steps of the study. We already kicked it off, late last year, and then in the summer, that's where we're gonna do our engineering safety analysis to kind of look at the projects that would be good to have for this board. And towards the end, November is when we expect to complete. So this project is planned. That's pretty fast. Usually it takes about a little bit longer, but we're really pushing the timeline on this one. So we want to make sure, all the data is still relevant and get it, in the hands of the county. Okay. So like I mentioned earlier, this is kind of a quick look at the ongoing past projects. Like was mentioned, we're kind of what's ongoing is the Walnut Boulevard to First Creek Bridge project. So that's going to install the bill passing central line, so that should definitely help with safety. And then the surface mounted channelizers along the medium striping. So that's kind of between Walnut Boulevard and First Creek Bridge. And we're also going to have the retro reflected borders. I know you've probably seen that in some other cities. It's kind of like a yellow border that's around the signals. That's going to help, just the visibility of the signals. And you're going to see later on with the safety data that it looks like a lot of the, I guess this is a little bit of a preview of what I'm going to talk about, but a lot of the collisions are happening at the approaches to the intersection. So whether people aren't paying attention or they're just not aware that a signal is coming. So we're going to see that a lot of it is within that approach. So that's definitely going to help. It's a low cost solution, but definitely something that's going to be readily visible. So the signals are more visible. And then, as you probably can see, we have the concrete median barriers. That's phase one's already completed for a while. So you see that on some portion in the southern part, the Vasco project corridor, and then we're hoping to get the phase 2 soon. Carl mentioned we have the funding that's almost there, so that's going to be good. And then this is just, you've probably already seen this before. This is just the paper surveys. We have additional copies that you can have, but if not, the QR code will also link you to the online survey. And then interactive good tool. I see a lot also was able to figure out how to use this, so this is great. And then able to put their comments, just drop the pin on the map and then provide your own comments. So that's really good as well. So thank you for doing that.
We've gotten over 300.
Yes, almost there. I think it was 290 something, but we're getting close. We might have already hit it right now. So that's definitely really good. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. Definitely input from you, the community members. We don't want to do it in a vacuum, right? So we want your input as well. So just a quick look at the corridor characteristics. So we're looking at the Vasco Road all the way from the Marsh Creek Road all the way to the border with Alameda County. So that's about 12 miles, about approximately. And I know I just drove it just getting here. Definitely, it's a principal arterial. A lot of people use it getting to work, going home. So definitely very frequently used. And I see even on the Alameda side, a lot of people are taking a lot of side roads just to get on Vasco. So, but that's a whole other thing that I'm sure they can try to take care of. But yeah, it's definitely an economic driver. You guys use it, and it's important for the economy of the region. So it's definitely good to take a look at, so we can improve the safety, but also the efficiency as well. So. Okay, so this is we're actually going to dig into data a little bit. So what you see here, I know it might be a little bit hard to see, but the first thing we're going to look at is the crashes by year and severity. So how California kind of looks at the safety data is the most important is usually based on severity. So how severe is the collision? You can go all the way from fatal all the way to property damage only. So these collisions are usually written up by CHP or the police officer writing the police report. They'll put down a lot of that information. So this is what that data comes from. And this is the latest data that we're using. 2019 and 2023, we started this last year, but 2024 is still a draft. Data is not finalized, it doesn't have all the information. So this is the latest data.
Let me help.
So as you can see, the most severe collisions have occurred actually most recently in 2023. So that's where 54, the most collisions along this corridor, and also the most severe at 5. So 3 fatal and 2 serious injuries. The next most serious injury collisions is in 2020. But as you can see, there was less overall collision. So since COVID, things have been increasing as more people are going home. It's kind of expected. So there's more collisions, and it's also a little bit more severe, which is not the best. So we're I know we can't avoid all collisions, but what we're trying to do, and the county with the state and the U.S. Department of Transportation, is we're looking at trying to reduce fatal and severe injuries to 0. So that's really the goal. We're not saying we're going to reduce every collision, but we want to reduce the most severe and most fatal collisions. So that's the ones we want to avoid. So that's kind of what we're looking at here too. And as you can see from the data, that's also going to play a part in how we do our analysis, looking at the most severe collisions. So, and as you can see up here, just a quick map. Most of the collisions really are in the northern part of Vasco, where the 3 intersections are, that's kind of where more of the collisions are happening. Even though speeds are faster down south, that's kind of northern section is kind of where we'll be doing some more of our focus. Right. Go over this a little bit quicker, but this is just the crashes by time of day. It's kind of interesting to look at. I mean, I know by crashes by day of week, it's not something that we can really utilize, but it's just good to know, right? So when are people on the road the most, and where are the crashes occurring? So it seems like Tuesday and Fridays are pretty high. I know Tuesdays is kind of like the new Monday, so a lot of people go into the office on Tuesdays. And also the crashes by time of day. So a lot of crashes are in the early morning, 6 to 9 a.m., and then in the afternoon, right, 3 to 6 p.m. is kind of what we call the peak hours. So that's where a lot of the collisions are happening. And more so, I would say here is the PM peak hour. So the 3 to 6, 6 to 9 p.m., especially on the Contra Costa side of Vasco Road, because a lot in the evenings, more people are, going home. So that's where a lot of the collisions are occurring. I know I looked at it a little bit earlier. The morning rush hour is not quite as bad, right? So I think it kind of builds up more on the Alameda side in the morning. So that's kind of where the congestion starts. Okay, so kind of go over, there's a lot of tables here, but I'll try to guide us through this. This is kind of looking at just the collision types. So if we first looked at collision severities, and now we're looking at the types of collision. So how did the crash occur? So as you can see, the most common type of collision along Vasco Road is rear end. So that's the most prevalent. We're looking at almost 88 collisions, rear end collisions, and that's quite high. It's actually a little bit unusual. That usually isn't the highest, but what makes sense with that is that this is a corridor with limited intersections, higher speeds. People might not be paying attention. So once they're approaching, like I said, approaching the intersections, rear ends are happening. So it's kind of also goes along with the, things we see with the collisions occurring near the intersection. So that's also where the rear ends are occurring. There's also a little bit of there's quite a bit of hit objects as well. And this is a rural corridor where people are hitting objects, whether it's man-made or not. It could be even some of the infrastructure that we have out there, but there's definitely some stuff we can do to help that, including increasing the visibility of the signs that we have out there, and just the lighting perhaps, so things like that. But it's not quite as bad. So mainly the rear ends that we're focusing on. And then at the intersection, there are broadsides and side swipes. Those are quite common at intersections. So broadsides are kind of a typical T-bone collision. So that's kind of what happens when maybe one person is running a red light and they just get T-boned. So that's a broadside. And side swipes are what kind of occur during the movement of changing the lane. So that's usually along like mid-block segments, just where one car is changing the lane and maybe they don't see the other car in the blind spot. That's kind of where side swipes occur. So usually you see more of those in the city, like urban areas, but we still have some of that. So we definitely need to still look at intersection collisions to kind of determine how we kind of help mitigate those. So just a quick tangent, I have some additional maps up here. I don't know if you probably haven't looked at them yet, but what you'll see in these circles is actually some examples of what actually occurred. So I know I have dots on like this is a severe or fatal collision, but in these circles you'll see actually how the crash occurred. Like, so for this example, it was a head-on DUI. So they were coming down south. One of the parties was drunk, and then there was a head-on collision. So this is the exact location where it occurred. So this is something that you can look at maybe after this presentation, during the Q&A session. Okay, and then the bottom tables are just looking at the rear end collision types. Those are the highest, and then we also see that Camino Diablo is actually where all the rear ends are occurring. So the approaches to Camino Diablo, and then also at the intersection. So that's kind of where a lot of the rear end collisions are occurring. And you'll see later, actually, Camino Diablo is actually where a lot of overall collisions are occurring as well, not just rear ends. So, great. So the next one to go over is what we call crash causes. So look at crash severity, crash type, and now crash causes. So what caused the crash? So this is good to know too, to kind of see what's happening, right? Maybe I'll give a little bit of a good feedback. There's not much crash caused by, say, hitting a pedestrian or bicyclist. We don't really have that issue here, maybe because we don't have any pedestrians or bicyclists on Vasco Road. Yeah, so that's a good thing, because that's actually a big issue in more urban areas, so. But what we do see here is, yeah, because of the limited intersections, people can get quite fast. So I was even driving today, and the speed limit seems like people think that's too slow. They try to overtake you even at the speed limit. So unsafe speeds are a common crash cause as well. You know, over 81, 38% of all crashes are unsafe speeds, and then improper turning, which is pretty common. You can have some improper turning. That could be anything from the car that's on the side and trying to merge into traffic at the intersection, you know, things like that. So actually, so those top two are the most prevalent. So the good thing is that we can really focus on those two crash causes. A lot of times it's kind of more spread out. I mean, there's DUIs, we kind of have that everywhere, and like was kind of mentioned before, we will also have a section on education, public policy as well. I know engineering countermeasures is going to be our main focus, but we will also have a section on what we can do to kind of increase the education on reducing like DUI effects and things like that. So that's also going to be a section in our report. So this is kind of the same data as what's earlier. We're just looking at the crash cause locations. So the density is really more than section of Vasco. And the improper turnings, you kind of see like 3 hotspots at the top. I mean, that's kind of where the approaches to the intersections are. So that's where most of the improper turning is. And a little bit down south, I think that's kind of where just people are merging in, just being from the sides, from some of the rural roads there. And then driving in the DUI is kind of all over. It's kind of just where it happens. But really, the unsafe speeds, happening on the approaches to the intersections. So, maybe they're going too fast still while they're getting close to the intersections and then causing a collision. So we're definitely going to be focused on, on the approaches to the intersections. Okay, and here's another metric that we're going to look at. We have more graphs, or more tables. But this one is what we call crashes involved. It's a little bit interesting terminology, but we call it like NVIW, so what the motor vehicle involved with. So most commonly, 77% is other motor vehicles, which is pretty normal. I mean, it could be a little bit higher in other settings, like urban areas, but 77% is just crashing between 2 vehicles. Yeah. Again, no pedestrians or bicyclists, which is great. Fixed objects is a little bit higher than what we like to see, so we definitely will dig into kind of, why people are hitting objects. And again, it's, distractions, or maybe something that's, maybe we need to make it more clear, like a barrier or something. We put some retroreflective tape on there, something to make things more stand out. I know lighting is an issue here too. It's very rural, and I know quite the lightings aren't really down south as well. So, so you can kind of see like KSI. So yeah, again, got the 4 KSIs, which is killed or seriously injured, like mentioned earlier. So we say KSIs, but what it really means is the fatal collisions and the severe injury collisions, which is really important. So yeah, KSI collisions are 88%, so it's higher than just the average collision, 77. So the most severe injuries are 88% are with other motor vehicles. Okay, so this one's a little bit more lighthearted. I mean, just kind of, I want to say light sense. We're looking at kind of the age group, the lighting conditions. So where we see the lighting, inadequate lighting, where we can improve that. I know there's some, laws with kind of maintaining like minimal light, kind of the rural areas. So there's stuff that we can look at improving, especially along the intersections, to help with that as well. So help increase the lightings. As you can see, so like most of the collisions are occurring during the daylight but when they do happen at night, they're often at areas where there's no street lights. So like when their officers are right down the hill, they'll say, you know, it's nighttime, there's no street lights, so it's completely dark. That's when it occurs. And then this age group is not, you know, this is something that we kind of like to look at. I mean, if it's an educational thing or not. I think for this corridor, it definitely is. Sometimes we have a little bit of uptick with older folks getting into collisions, but this is actually not the case. I'm just very surprised with Vasco Road. So we have very good 65 plus drivers, but the younger drivers are causing a lot of, they're the highest proportion of those causing collisions are those under 29 years old. So, so that's something that we might have to focus on a little bit more for this study to kind of look at mitigating that, maybe a little bit more education intervention in the schools to help reduce that number. I don't think it's, you know, it's great to see that most of them are 29 below, and actually the highest percentage is 24 below. So that's not great to see.
That's drivers, not whoever got hurt.
Those are, yeah, those are drivers. So those are involved. Yeah, the primary drivers. Yeah. Okay. So here we're going to dig down a little bit more. We're going to have some crash cost numbers. So I'm going to try to explain how we kind of calculate the crash costs. So it might seem kind of weird that we're putting a dollar amount on these collisions, but what this really helps us with, and helps actually with the funding process, is that a higher dollar amount means that it's a more serious collision location. So the location is rated, you know, really high in terms of crash costs. That means you might need, it doesn't mean we need 30 million to mitigate it, but it means it's going to require a lot of improvements. And because you're justifying, you know, the federal government will be able to help assist this process and other funding sources as well. So kind of how we calculate this is again, I'm going to mention KSI, so the fatal and severe injuries. The KSIs have a really high crash cost. So what this is looking at is equivalent property damage only. So this is the property. Usually you equate a cost to collisions with property damage, but we're kind of using that formula to equate a cost to all collision types. So, you know, again, it's arbitrary. It doesn't mean, you know, a severe collision is only worth 2 million. That's just kind of how we determine the magnitude of the cost of multiple severe collisions. Even though there's 50 property damage only collisions, the 2 fatal will win over. The government will see that 2 fatal collisions is worth much more than just 50 property damage, where it's not serious. So, you know, and it doesn't mean we won't look at property damage collisions or just complain of pain, like it wasn't a very serious collision. It just means that we're going to tailor different countermeasures for the different degrees of severity. So definitely the most fatal collision where it occurs is going to get the most, you know, essentially the most funding to get to reduce that crash cost and reduce the severity of that location when collisions do happen. So, as you can see, so probably a little bit hard to see. It's almost hard to see with me too. The highest crash cost location is Camino Diablo and Vasco Road. I mentioned it earlier. That's where a lot of the rear ends are happening on the approaches to Camino Diablo. That's the first intersection people see, you know, when they're getting, you know, towards the northern end of Vasco Road. So that's kind of where people maybe aren't prepared to stop. So a lot of collisions are happening there. They're the most severe. And when we calculate all the collisions at Camino, all the approaches to Camino Diablo, we call that mid-block. So it's on the approaches to the intersection. It's over 31 million. So that's means it's very severe collisions happening there. And for intersections, it's not quite as bad, so we don't quite have as many intersection collisions on Vasco Road, primarily because it's a long segment, there's fewer intersections. But the most severe is on Marsh Creek Road, so that's where the intersection collisions are the most severe. And that's also kind of, I know there's a lot of traffic goes through there, even if they don't go along Vasco Road south. I do see, I'll show you later, but we do see a lot of traffic people making left onto California, the state route. So even if they just go through it, to go on the state route 4, that's still part of the collision information there. So that's kind of why the crash cost is high at that location. So, but this is just something to take note. This is something that we're gonna dig deeper into, and kind of the basis for where we're gonna, put the most improvements on, or when we're proposing recommendations and countermeasures, we're definitely gonna be focusing on Camino Diablo as one of the projects. It could be several projects together as a group, and then Marsh Creek Road as well. And it doesn't mean we won't look at the other spots as well. It just means that we can tailor different countermeasures and different recommendations for those. Okay, just gonna go through this quicker. Oh, sorry, yeah. Oh, yeah, sure.
Doesn't mean it's estimated number that costs.
No, it doesn't. So, like I kind of said, it's an arbitrary factor. It doesn't mean it's going to cost that amount to the county. It's just a way of comparing locations, how severe a location is. It's probably almost not a good idea that they came up with, using a dollar value, but really it's just a quantifiable way of comparing how severe the location is. So that just because a location has 50 crashes, but they're less severe, you still want to focus on areas where the really severe, injuries are occurring. That's not occurring.
So you're basically putting the number.
Yeah.
By all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. It's a multiplying. So yeah, so this is just kind of what we just spoke about, but just kind of format. As you can see, again, Camino Diablo, the approaches, a lot of collisions on the approaches, Walnut Road, the intersections, and then Marsh Creek Road, we have, some severe collisions on the intersections. So kind of just taking a look at the locations. I do think that, especially later on, if you guys can still come up and look at these maps, they'll actually give you a little bit more detail too. So, okay, so this is just another way of looking at the collisions. Instead of looking at it based on intersections or mid-block intersections, we're looking at it based on segments. We kind of did like what we call a cluster analysis to kind of take a look at what segments are most heavily populated by the collision. So we'll just take it segment by segment. So again, cluster 4, which is close to Camino Diablo approaches, kind of in between Camino Diablo and Walnut. So you saw earlier in the previous map, there's a big cluster there. So we have quite a lot of collisions there. This doesn't take into account severity, it's just the quantity. So, just another way of looking at it. This is kind of showing the same data. Yeah, so cluster 4 has a lot of variance on the approaches to Camino Diablo. And then just kind of the cluster location and the gears, highest number of collisions for which gear based on the cluster. So we'll have this PowerPoint on the website after we're done with this workshop. If you want to look into a little more detail, but yeah, just kind of a different way of representing the data. And so, getting towards the end, so this is kind of a quick summary of the findings for the crashes that we looked at. I kind of mentioned a lot of these already, but I can kind of go over it quickly again. Just in terms of intersections, Marsh Creek Road intersection seems like it's the most serious for intersection collisions. So about 4.8 million in terms of severity. But Camino Diablo Road has the highest number of collisions overall. So for intersections, at 63%. So again, Camino Diablo Road has a lot of collisions, and they're pretty severe. But just for intersections, Marsh Creek Road is also something to be looked at. The mid-block sections, again, Camino Diablo Road is something that we have to look at. It's just with the EPDO calculations, it goes above, all the other locations. And it has also 73% of all the mid-block collisions occurring there. So again, the mid-blocks are the approaches. On the approach to Camino Diablo, something's going on there. A lot of collisions, and they're pretty severe. So, and also, so what we looked at with the cluster, this kind of shows that the mid-block segments between Walnut Boulevard and Camino Diablo is pretty serious. So, kind of have to look at that as well. All of this is north, the northern section of Vasco Road. And again, intersection crashes, they're not quite as much. They're not as many intersection collisions, 23% versus mid-blocks or collisions occurring between intersections or along the corridor where there's not where the intersections are at. So that's 77% of all the crashes. So that's actually why the projects that are kind of working on right now, they're actually helping with the medians and stuff like that, helping create safer safer driving habits for the mid-block crashes. So we're gonna take a quick look at the traffic. I know traffic is important as well. We did an initial traffic analysis. So we did go into the field. We collected counts at intersections. We call that turning movement counts. And we also collected traffic counts at the segments with the mid-block. So kind of an example of how it looks like when we collect the data. We went out there to do that, and this is definitely will be hard for you guys to see. So, but we'll have this presentation online. But a lot of what those numbers represent are, during the peak hours, how many vehicles are going through, basically. So you can see where people are traveling. So you can kind of see how people taking a right turn, they're going through. A lot of the cars are going south on Marsh Creek Road. They're going south 924, but a lot of people are making a left turn too to California State Route 4. So that's also where a lot of people are going. But majority of the traffic is going north south. And this is looking at the speed data. I know speed is a common cause of collisions along this corridor. This data actually shows you what the average speed is. So we have the closest speed limit. It's 55. I know it's 50 on the Alameda side, but it's 55 for the majority of the segments on the Contra Costa side. But still, people are traveling much higher than that. So we have what we call, the percentage of vehicles traveling greater than 55. So that's the closest speed limit. Sometimes we use this to kind of correct this, what the speed limit should be, but I don't believe that would be the case on this road. That's usually done in city setting. What this is just kind of looking at where people are speeding the most and what we can do to kind of counter that. Maybe it's enforcement, maybe it's more signage to kind of show you what the speed limit is. Do people not see that it's 55? Some people are, the average speed, like on the segment between the county line and the first midpoint, so it's the first half of Vasco Road, over 96% of people are, over 96% of people are driving faster than 55. So that's really high. Yeah.
You're not shocked.
Yeah. I mean, it is it does feel a little bit like a, divide, highway during that specific portion. Some portions it looks like more of a highway, so I can see why people are encouraged to drive faster. But what the problem is that as you're approaching where the intersections are, it gets back to a rural 2-lane road pretty fast. I think people are aware that, they shouldn't be maintaining that speed that they saw earlier because they felt, like, with the barriers and stuff, they felt more protected, but then it kind of lets off. That's why we're also looking at adding more of those barriers too. So that's one of our Contra Costa County projects to kind of improve that. But again, we really want to see what we can do to mitigate that speeding issue, whether it's enforcement or signage, things like that. So that's definitely what you can see. So it kind of decreases a little bit as again, more than it has to, right? It's where the intersections are. But again, yeah, 96%, the first half, the first portion with Vasco Road, so that's quite high. So that's what the data that we collected, so that's just real world data. Yeah. So here, this is so we were kind of looking at the speeds. Now we're looking at the traffic capacity. So the capacity of intersections. I know this is like a really crazy table, but what we really want to get away from this is that we kind of score intersections from an A to F range, how well the intersection does, and really, Vasco Roads, the intersection is not too bad. There's some intersections in urban areas and city areas that you can definitely tell the traffic doesn't get through. What we consider satisfactory is a D or better. Again, I didn't come with a rating, but D is passing. So as you can see, all the intersections do pass in terms of how well traffic passes through. There's always certain movements that we see that we can show some improvement. Probably one of the worst ones is the where you're on Camino Diablo.
Screen share.
Shoot. Sorry, I'm gonna try to share again. There we go. Let's see if that did it. Okay. So yeah, when you're on Camino Diablo, you're making a right turn to go north on Vasco. That has a pretty high delay. So the only thing we see from that is if you actually, remember the Camino Diablo is also where all the issues are happening. But the right turn movement from Camino Diablo to North Vasco, there's no channelized median. So that's that's like the median where you can do a protected right turn. You have to yield though. It's not a full stop. But we don't have it on that specific movement. So that's something that we can look at, make an improvement on. It increases safety. It also increases the efficiency. So people aren't waiting forever to go from Camino Diablo north onto Vasco Road. So that's why it has an F grade there. But everything else is pretty good. So this just kind of shows that it's not really the intersections that's the concern. I think it's really the mid blocks between the intersections and also the segments are where we should focus our attention. All right, we're towards the end. So some next steps. So we're going to collect your survey data and the outreach data. We're going to compile it and we're going to summarize what you guys think. Again, we have almost over 300 participants. So thank you so much. I mean, that's really a lot. That's really great. It's something that we're going to do a deep dive on and see what you guys are really thinking. So we're going to do a kind of like a summary, short memo on what the public thinks. The survey is still open until the end of the month. I know probably participation is going to drop off towards the end, but we're going to start looking at the data and kind of show you. Most likely we'll have this posted online as well, just kind of what the survey shows in terms of your opinions on the current state of Vasco Road. And after this, kind of mentioned before, we're gonna look at identifying the safety emphasis areas, so the areas that we really want to do a deep dive to do our engineering analysis on. And again, Camino Diablo looks like an area that's definitely gonna be an area of concern, as well as a lot of that mid-block section, the mid-blocks between the intersections, and also the approaches to the intersections. And then we're gonna look at some countermeasures that we can implement, to kind of reduce the severity of the crashes and the number of crashes. And then we're gonna develop a list of initial safety projects. So that's what you're gonna see, probably a little bit more exciting than this first workshop. The second workshop, we're actually really gonna be working on the maps. We're gonna be discussing recommendations, ways to improve the corridor. We're gonna have a list of initial projects, but we're gonna also ask you for input on that as well. So this second workshop will be quite interactive. And again, the last workshop is kind of more reporting back. We're gonna be, presenting the draft report. So really just 2 more workshops, and we're hoping to conclude, this report by towards the end of the year. There's usually a quick timeline for this type of report, but we're looking to expedite the process. And so this is the website. It has, if you bookmark the website, it's on the QR code on your handout to the project website. It'll have all the information you need. We're gonna post the PowerPoint online, and also hopefully most of the recording of this. I think most of it is recorded. Maybe there's a brief portion where the slide didn't show up, but we'll have the slides on there as well. So, and also additional information on the timing for the next workshop should come out later, towards the summer. I think you'll probably get another class on that. And I think, that's it for me.